Welcome to the Peaked podcast, where I talk about gender identity ideology and other bad ideas, women's rights and free speech from a European point of view. Hi Jaclynn, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here in Taiwan on your program.
Yeah, really happy to talk to you today. Just as an intro, I'm going to explain how I came across your name and how you came onto my radar. So I have been following the evolution of a concept called the anti-gender movement, or commentary on this thing called the anti-gender movement, for the last year or so. And as a result, I have all these Google alerts set up, one for anti-gender movement, anti-gender actors, stuff like this. And the reason I am interested in that is because the anti-gender movement as a concept, which applies to us now, apparently, whether we like it or not. So people who are against gender ideology or transgenderism. The reason I'm interested in that is because it was a concept that existed prior to the transgender explosion of the last decade, and it was always used to apply to people, particularly conservatives, who were against things like women's rights, abortion, contraception, all this sort of stuff. And in the past few years, as activists and funders and philanthropists have tried to fight back against us, which is gender critical people, they've had a very difficult time sort of in categorizing us. And so what they've sort of done is they've chosen this old concept called anti-gender movement, and they're kind of trying to shoehorn us, which is women like us who speak out about transgenderism. They're trying to shoehorn us into that concept of anti-gender, which has existed since it took off in the mid-90s, in the context of the population and development conferences, and it was used by feminists to describe the actions of the Holy See, the Vatican, and the Islamic conservative states and conservative African countries who were opposed to sort of feminist talking points in those population and development conferences. So, as I said, this anti-gender movement concept has existed for years, but now we've been added to the mush. And I don't think it applies at all. And so I have been on the lookout for mentions of it. I try to read it's increasingly being used. I was very scared yesterday when I came across a strategy document of the Global Fund, which is the Bill and Melinda Gates, or Bill Gates AIDS funding tool. And in 2023, last year in September, they released a strategy for the coming few years. And we were in it. It was like anti-gender movement, including feminists, so that there's different ways that they describe us. They lump us in with the far right, but then they also sometimes try to frame us as wayward feminists, also led astray by money. It's ridiculous. But you came up because I got a Google alert that said something about the anti-gender movement in Taiwan, and I said, ooh, anti-gender movement Taiwan, and it listed you. Can I say your family name, or
I usually go as far as publications and my online presence. I go by Jaclynn Joyce.
Jaclynn Joyce. Cool. Yeah. So I saw that name, Jaclynn Joyce, come up in one of my alerts, and I was like, oh, and then it sort of turns out after I spoke to you that you're kind of you are the anti-gender movement in Taiwan.
Part of it, for sure. I'm the face. A lot of my Taiwanese colleagues are anonymous for fear of retribution. So I am I'm often the spokesperson and therefore the easiest person to come after.
Okay. Yeah. And why are you not afraid to talk out?
Oh, I'm definitely, it's not fun to have, it's been several years. So at this point, there's not really much people can throw at me that's new. But after several years of dealing with it, I feel a bit more confident. I don't like being bullied. I was raised by a very strong father who taught me to be a strong daughter and fight for my rights. Mm-hmm. And I don't like being told what to think, what to say, and how to behave. And I'm a PhD candidate in philosophy. So for me, this started as a very philosophical issue grounded in free speech. Mm-hmm. Also a lifelong feminist. But for me, a lot of it was the the compelled speech, the forcing people to believe what I see as quite, religious beliefs, falls in line with a religious sort of umbrella. And I don't like people telling me what to do, especially when it's irrational and illogical. And I said, come and get me. Yeah, no, I've been sort of the face, because I'm an academic. I also work at a university here, and I'm a permanent resident of Taiwan. So I think, it's perhaps the American attitude of, you can't tell me what to say or to shut up, and you're not going to bully me into a corner. And
you're definitely not the first American I've heard say that they got drawn into this because of not just free speech, but very libertarian, sort of like, who are you to tell me what to think? Yeah.
I don't react well to people trying to bully me or threaten me into being quiet, especially when we're dealing with a very rational discussion of women's rights. People behave so irrationally. So from the beginning, I was very clear with my colleagues. I'm going to publish, I'm going to use my name, I'm going to post it all over social media. And so, I do tend to be the one that gets tagged in things like this article that you saw. And thank you for explaining that. I actually had no idea. No one, since that article has come out, no one has shared it with me. I think no one's seen it, at least in my circle. If you hadn't have shared it, I don't think we would have seen it. Perhaps
so who was, I'll explain in a second to people who are listening what the article was, but who was it intended for then? Who was its intended audience?
Sure, it's an independent news outlet here in Taiwan. And I think the intended audience is probably more English speakers. A lot of their work is put out, like that article, in English. They have a big foreigner readership.
Okay.
But yeah, they posted several times within their news outlet against sex-based rights for women, in the sense that they're very pro self-ID and anti the work that we are doing here in Taiwan. I mean, they nothing libelous. I did indeed post that article, and I published article on 4W Pub. They're right, but to single me out of hundreds, thousands of Taiwanese people who are part of our organizations was, with intent. But that means that we're doing work here, and they notice us, and they're angry.
Yeah. So to explain what it is, the Google alert that I got was for an article titled "Taiwan's anti-gender movement engages in research misconduct, mistranslation, and misinformation," and it was written by an individual called Yo-Ling Chen. And then I'll just read a bit of the beginning. In recent months, Taiwan's anti-gender movement has engaged in research misconduct, misinformation campaign to push specious claims about general population attitudes towards transgender rights through the facade of academic objectivity. Blah, blah, blah. U.S. expat co-founder of Taiwan Women's Association, Jaclynn Joyce, published or shared articles, referenced an online questionnaire survey conducted by scholars.
Right. So the article, to give a little background, the article that I shared is an article that was actually published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior. So this article was titled "Gender Self-Identification, Opinions About Transgender Women from a National Online Survey in Taiwan." And the people who are behind this article are not, they're not friends of mine. I wouldn't say that they are anti-gender activists. They are academics, they're doctors, and I'm in contact with one of them. Basically, I went to the authors of the article and I asked them directly, did the journal ask you questions, and will there be a retraction, or were there any mistakes? And the answer is no. Okay. And so I have the contact information of one of the doctors who's one of the co-authors. There's several authors for the article. Dr. Wei Chang is the author that I spoke to. And she is a doctor at the Department of Pathology at a hospital here in Taiwan. And I asked her, did the journal did they contact you at all? And she said they did contact them in June, and they have no doubts about their article, whether in terms of ethics or in terms of their academic content. And she says, this is a direct quote, "I really don't know why New Bloom published their questions. The Archive of Sexual Development or Sexual Behavior had no doubt on us." Mm-hmm. And so there's not going to be a retraction. There's not going to be a change to the article.
So the only accusation of that the research isn't good is coming from this New Bloom publication. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. Okay. And the author that I spoke to, she's not familiar with them. No one from New Bloom, as far as I'm aware, reached out to them. But there's no retraction or anything like that. Their work is sound. Their work is fine. There's been no problems. They did go in front of a institutional review board, and there were no problems found. So, and this was in June.
Okay, so to recap then, what happened was a bunch of Taiwanese researchers carried out a survey on general attitudes to trans women in Taiwan, and then published their paper was accepted by the Archives of Sexual Behavior, which is probably the I wouldn't say the biggest publisher maybe of topics on the trans issue. So it's a quite prestigious journal, if I understand. And so it was accepted, it was published, and then suddenly this news agency that is targeted at expats in Taiwan largely publishes an article accusing the authors of bad research. And then because you had also written about it, they also targeted you and are trying to claim that you're sort of part of this anti-gender movement that's sprung up in Taiwan. So when I read the critical article at first, they don't really. What were their arguments? Explain to me what their arguments were that claimed, like, how did they claim that it was badly done research?
Well, I didn't read it through in a detailed way because I already knew that there was no problem with the article. So I went immediately to one of the authors to confirm that it was sound, there were no retractions or problems with the research. And once that was confirmed, I mean, I guess they have problems with I think their main problem is the conclusion that Taiwanese people do not accept and do not want trans-identified males in female spaces. So we'll just cut to the end point because I'm not going to try to decipher what people are going to make up in their own minds about an article that is not in any trouble or having retractions. That's not really, I don't know what people are thinking when they accuse these authors of misconduct when it's been proven there hasn't been any. But they're not happy with the results because it doesn't look good. And that's the main point that they're trying to make.
Okay.
I'm surprised they did it because again, there's no, I'm surprised that they would make that claim. And I've definitely linked in previous articles to that specific research. So they're not wrong. As far as an anti-gender, that's a very odd term and I wouldn't use it for myself, but we're certainly anti-self-ID and we're certainly anti-ideologues and anti-radicalized ideologies. So in that, they're correct. And they've certainly been very upset at the apparently very good work that we're doing here in Taiwan to push back against it because they've mentioned us several times in the past.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump to the conclusion as you suggest. The conclusion of the research carried out by the Taiwanese researchers was public acceptance of gender self-identification requires support from its residents. Our findings suggest that gender self-identification has not begun to approach even a moderate level of public support among survey respondents.
Yes.
Okay, so they found, once they asked regular Taiwanese people, what do you think about self-ID, which is now enacted in Taiwan, if I understand, which is now
there's been a few cases. Yes, there's been a few landmark cases starting in 2021, which was when I started being active with publishing and everything. Yes, there's been A couple of males, and most recently a female that was able to change her legal sex marker and documentation to male.
So are these like case by case basis?
They're case by case for now, but there's definitely a push in the mainstream media. There's definitely a push to make this just the way it is, to make it normalized self-ID.
Okay. And so in your so you were saying in 2021 it was when you first got interested in this. How did you come across the gender self-identification issue
So I love that your Substack is called Peaked, right? That's the name. Yeah, and that I say that all the time, and people maybe out of the West don't know the word, but I say that I peaked. I peaked in maybe 2019 here in Taiwan, and then spent a very lonely couple of years trying to figure out, what's going on. How do I feel? How do I vocalize this, especially being here? Actually, being here probably allowed me the freedom to get to the conclusion about how I felt faster, because I didn't have anybody. Taiwan, despite the fact that there is a push, there's a very quiet niche push for this. You don't see it at work or in schools. There's literally no one going, "What are your pronouns?" That's not a part of my life here. It's just not. I suppose it could be if I hung out with a certain expat crowd.
Okay, so you don't move in those circles, because I would say they're probably diplomats' kids and stuff are probably all on board with this, no?
I move in circles of people who naturally came to the same conclusion that I did. So I run in common sense circles. I run in circles of people who already possess basic critical thinking skills. So it was never really an issue. Certainly I've lost acquaintances, but my life hasn't actually been affected. I'm extraordinarily lucky in that my life has not actually been affected by this, and I don't have to deal with it in the way that
even back home in the States, family at home in the States, you haven't heard any drama?
I've heard a little bit, but we're from the rural countryside of Hawaii, where it also hasn't quite hit as much. Right. Of course, my friends in the West have to deal with a lot of things depending on their job or where they go to school or where they study. But I'm an adjunct professor at a university, an American university, and I don't deal with this at all.
So it hasn't infected the international American universities. I think it has in France. I met someone who was in an American university in Paris, and she was all on board with this.
It has at a couple of universities. There's a couple of universities with gender studies programs brought in by American educated Taiwanese. There's a couple of very, very Western influenced universities that have kind of brought it in. You'll see it in bits and pieces, but it might just be that department or that administrator.
Because your domain is philosophy, which tends to go hard for gender wang. No?
My philosophy program is based in Europe. I'm just writing my dissertation right now. So luckily, where they are, it's not an issue at all. And most of them in my program, and definitely my professors, don't seem to have any problem with my approach to things.
That must be nice.
It is. We don't talk about it in depth, but it hasn't been an issue at all. So, and I'm on year 4 out of 100 years of PhD. So, but yeah, back to so I guess there's something I wanted to mention about that article that New Bloom wrote. I never noticed that at the bottom of the article, my friend Genevieve Gluck from I think Genevieve from Redux. I sent it to her, and she told me, if you notice on the bottom of the article, it says that this article is sponsored in part by Tentacles, which is the Transgender Educational Network, Theory in Action for Creativity, Liberation, Empowerment, and Service Initiative. Wow, that's quite a name. And the person behind that is an American, Susan Stryker. He is a self-proclaimed lesbian.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he is apparently helping fund them, which
really? But does he have money? Isn't he like a professor in
Arizona? Yeah, he gets grants, and at the bottom of this article it says that, and this particular author is also an important thing to note: American Taiwanese. He is American Taiwanese. I think he identifies as trans, non-binary, gray sexual demi-boy, and I'll let you figure that one out because I can't be bothered. It's a lot of things. Yeah.
Okay, so Jaclynn, sorry to interrupt, but I found a press release from April this year about Tentacles funding from Susan Stryker. So, as you said, Susan Stryker is a male who pretends to be a lesbian. He's obviously an autogynephile. I think, isn't he the editor of like Duke University's Transgender Quarterly Journal or something? Yeah. Or maybe he did a special issue or something. But he came across my radar because he showed up at some annual lesbian conference in Cork, which is my country. I'm from Ireland. Yeah. And there was drama about it. And that was when he first came on my radar. But he's been one of the ones most responsible for like the retconning, I think, of the history. So he's always talking about this cafeteria riots, which preceded Stonewall. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yeah.
So he's written books on transgender history, and all lies. Like I've read it, it's lies. And so here we have a link to him funding this Taiwanese NGO. So hold on a sec. Major new Mellon Foundation funded initiative will support trans and non-binary scholarship. So the GLBT Historical Society, and Susan Stryker announced the creation of Tentacles, a new initiative that brings trans-oriented humanities and cultural studies scholarship to bear on practices of social transformation. Blah, these people love words. It doesn't say anything about funding internationally, but okay, so what is the link with Tentacles and this article? Is it the author?
At the end of the New Bloom article, it says that this article was paid for in part by funding by Tentacles.
Okay, so we have a very clear American influence here, because that anti-gender movement talk is very much coming from these large funders, and it's just popping up more and more all over the place. Like, and I think the grants are the grants are being spent now. Like the talk of funding anti-gender movement materials started in 2023, but we're seeing now the product of it now is just coming to light. So that's very interesting. Have you then contacted New Bloom, the publication, and asked them about this, or?
So they've published a few pieces. This one was not particularly hostile, but in the past they've been pretty upset about the work that we've been doing as an organization, and it's this isn't the first time that they've tagged me. So no, I don't think I'll contact them. I'm not sure, when an organization, I feel like in this particular case, because there's been no accusation by the journal of misconduct and there's no retraction, I feel like in this particular case, there may be an issue of just really just outright lying about certain things that are happening. And I don't really want to associate with that. And I'm not sure there would be a point as well. They've never reached out to us. They've written about us for a while now. So
can you tell me a bit about your organization, what you do?
Sure. I'm co-founder, as they stated in the article. I'm one of 30, but I happen to be the only expat. And the reason I'm allowed to do that is because I have in Taiwan what's called a permanent residency, which means I'm kind of a step below a citizen. I can't vote, but I could also live here forever, never work, and never have to leave. I don't have to get a visa. I have an open work permit. I can, I follow the laws, and I can pretty much do whatever I want. I can do any kind of job I want. I have a lot of freedom. So because I have an APRC, I'm able to join organizations like this. If you were just a regular teacher here or employee at a company, you wouldn't have that. So with friends of mine and associates and colleagues and some people I don't even know, we gathered together a group of originally 30 founding members from all over Taiwan. Each district in Taiwan had to be represented. And we formed the Taiwan Women's Association, which is purely focused on women's sex-based rights in Taiwan. Of course, we focus a lot on gender ideology as the next incoming threat to what's happening in Taiwan. With TWA, I tend to take a more backseat. I am a board member, but most of what happens is in Chinese. I'm not touching that one. I'm not touching academic Chinese writing, or, you know, there's a lot of things that I just can't be a part of. So I take a backseat, and I'm sort of.
What do you mean you're not touching it? As in you don't
like
they're critiquing.
No,
the other
my
members are critiquing. Sorry, say that again.
Language barrier.
Oh,
language,
okay.
Yeah, purely language barrier with writing and speaking Chinese. Yeah. So.
Okay, but you do speak Chinese. A bit.
A little, badly,
okay.
But not enough to explain a lot of these. Yeah, definitely not to write academically about it or to be published about it. But I do work as sort of the connection to the West. I work to help get us recognized in journals and magazines and places like 4W, or, you know, in podcasts, things like that. And we also have, I'm not a member of this organization, but it's called No Self ID Taiwan. I do write for them sometimes. My friends are in charge of it. There is some overlap, but not as much as you might think. But No Self ID Taiwan is specifically documenting in Chinese for Taiwanese people to have access to.
Okay. I need to interrupt there because this is fascinating. Yeah. So there was enough backlash to self-ID in Taiwan, or like transgender nonsense generally, that there were 2 organizations. You were able to rustle up 30 people. So that's crazy. So, I mean, you were one of the founders and you're on the board, but who came up, who was noticing the problem apart from you? Like, were Taiwanese people saying, whoa, look what's coming, we need to get on top of this?
So the only other person that has come public and done interviews with me and podcasts and things like that is my friend Neo Yao. And he's heavily involved in the LGBT community in Taiwan and the Women's Day March, and cares deeply about LGBT rights and women's rights, and has been very upset in the past few years watching what has been happening in Taiwan. And a mutual friend put us together, and the creative sparks went flying everywhere. And he is my greatest ally here, and the one that is my go-to whenever, you know, we spoke before this podcast. He's great. And he translates a lot of things for me. He keeps me knowledgeable and updated about what's happening, because often these things aren't available in English. It's really mostly Neo who spent a lot of time with his colleagues who are also quite concerned about what was going on. A lot of people who are still going to remain anonymous. We have government employees, lawyers. I mean, people in positions that don't want to, you know, they're afraid of what could happen to them. So they remain anonymous, but are often the intellectual and financial backing behind what we're doing.
But what I don't understand is, like, on the one hand, you say it's not a thing. Trans isn't a thing in Taiwan. But on the other hand, it was enough of a problem. Was it only enough of a problem in the gay rights sphere? Or where was the problem manifesting that enough people said, whoa, we have to do something about this?
So I don't want to minimize. Maybe I'm minimizing what's happened to me. I mean, there was a huge cancel attack on me for years. Vicious. I mean, I had a group of women, female expats in Taiwan, you know, making jokes about killing my cat, like that level of crazy. I don't worry about physical violence here, but there's definitely been horrible things said, public postings about me, you know, a lot of bad stuff. But I think that might be cultural, where I'm willing to take that. And I think in Taiwan, there's an East Asian sort of culture of not wanting to lose face, not wanting to be publicly attacked, not wanting to be criticized. And I don't blame them. It's not nice to be constantly attacked or vilified. But I think culturally, I might be a little bit more open and willing to accept that. And it's not like I don't think it's like in the US or Canada, which I think is even worse, where you will lose your job. But I think you might get into trouble. You might be reprimanded if your position is high enough. I think that people have a right to be nervous. So I'm willing to take that on more. And I think that might be cultural. There's a cultural aspect at play here where people don't want to deal with that confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how was it? What were the signs that something was happening though? Like, were you seeing more and more, or your friend who you spoke about, were you seeing more like gender neutral bathrooms? Were you seeing more men dressed as women? What was the manifestations on the ground of transgender ideology?
You don't see it so much. I mean, you definitely see Tims sometimes, but it's less intrusive than it would be in the West. It's less in your face. Although the expat Tims are very much half-dressed, clearly hypersexualized outfits. If you see that, then yeah, it's from the expat community, not the Taiwanese community. But I started noticing a lot more social media posts by people that were within my circle who were posting things like, oh, we're gonna have a get-together community conversation at this bar or this restaurant to talk about the gingerbread man, the gender identity spectrum. And you need to start using words like cis, and you need to start using words like, assigned female at birth. And these are the correct words. And I started seeing those things floating around, and I was like, no, what's going on? And this sort of coincided. It happened around the same time, a little bit before the first person, it was a guy, was allowed to change his legal sex to female without any kind of surgery or hormones or anything that Taiwan used to be required for doing those things. And very few people did it. It's not a thing. And honestly, to be perfectly honest, I knew a few of the people who had done it, and they don't tend to go into female spaces. They really just want to be left alone. I think the influence of the West has made a lot of people very loud and in your face about things. But now there's been cases where people just show up, penis in hand, and go, I'm a woman, you bigot, change my identification. And they are being allowed to.
And I'm just looking at the names of Taiwanese NGOs that promote LGBTQ issues. Taiwan Equality Campaign, would that be one of the big ones?
I couldn't tell you offhand.
Are there a few? Like, is it a
There's
big?
a few.
Is there a whole scene? Okay. And have you looked into where they get their cash from, or who they are?
No, Self ID and my colleagues at TWA have looked into those things. I know we have information documenting. Because TWA has gone to court, to help protect people, and they have to know those things. Yeah, there's been a few court cases. There was a girl dragged to court, a young woman dragged to court by a Japanese Taiwanese author who claims to be a lesbian, took her to court for misgendering him and claimed it was slander. He won't win, but he's going to waste a lot of her money. So.
Oh my God, is that happening now?
Yeah, it's happening now for the past year.
I had no idea it was like that.
We haven't said anything yet because we don't want to get sued for slander. I'm not saying his name, so I think I should be okay. But
it's slander in terms of misgendering.
Yes, but I don't think he'll win this case. But she still has to pay money, which we're happy to cover those expenses. But
Jesus Christ,
people outside of Taiwan have been informed and will hopefully be writing about these issues, which perhaps we are not allowed to touch, but mutual friends of ours.
How are free speech rights in Taiwan then, in general?
Free speech rights are okay, but you have to stay away from slander. So I have to be careful sometimes with what I say or how I write about things. Yeah, you can be for slander. Yeah.
Is it similar to UK libel type laws or very different?
I couldn't give you specifics.
Okay.
Without knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Would the police show up in Taiwan and arrest you for misgendering someone? No, absolutely not. The go-to would be to take that person to court. So in Taiwan, there is some new law about protecting people's like sexualities. You can't degrade someone or dehumanize someone based on that. So this falls under the umbrella of, if I call a Tim he, a trans-identified male, if I say you're a man, he could potentially, maybe not win, but it really depends on the judge and how they've been influenced.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Was this amended sort of human rights or anti-discrimination law that added gender identity onto it, or was it brand new? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's funny how it's so similar all over the world, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The same sort of thing. So if I understood correctly, then yourself and your friends were both sort of, you started to see all of this ideology popping up online in particular, and it sort of infected. It didn't really infect academia though. So all those people who are interested in this topic, it's not that they were seeing like this sort of DEI and gender sort of infuse their work in academia. Okay.
It was definitely brought in by Western influence. There's no doubt about that. This didn't just show up, out of nowhere. It was definitely influenced by Western education, and there's a theme here, to follow what's happening in the West, to be greatly influenced by the West. So I started noticing it in the sense that, why are all these foreign expats posting about that here? That's random. I haven't been seeing that. And I see people having events and having those sort of conversations. And so I started posting about it, not in a particularly hostile way, just in a, I've seen this posted, I'm going to correct this language. This isn't okay. There's no subset of female,
Okay.
No one's assigned at birth a sex. Sex is observed. And so, I started noticing it in the expat community. Taiwanese colleagues noticed it happening, obviously in way more detail than I could, happening at the ground level in Taiwan and starting to build momentum. And then in September of 2021, this guy was allowed to change his legal sex. And that was kind of the start. And that's when I got something in Feminist Current. I had a whole series of articles in Feminist Current about what was happening in Taiwan. And that's sort of what jump-started my activism in that scale. Yeah.
So the average person in Taiwan, then, what is the level of, to what extent are people aware of what's happening abroad?
I don't think the average person has any clue, and I don't think they care, to be honest. I don't think they care at all. This is a niche thing, but what's happening is the government here is trying to really secretly, subversively push it through, which has been influenced by expats and influenced by Western educated expats, or Western educated Taiwanese, I'm sorry.
What would you say is the ideological leaning of the government that's currently in power?
The government that's currently in power, I think they were just elected in. I think they have stated that they are in line with the American left, like those sort of policies. I would say that they would be pro-gender, if we're going to use those terms. Yeah. They would probably be okay with pushing that through. Actually, in the last election, there was an openly trans, probably autogynephile male politician who ran on that platform of making it easier to get self-ID passed.
Audrey Tang?
No, Audrey Tang is the no. Audrey Tang works in a different department, and Audrey Tang is pretty okay. I think you can call Audrey he. I mean, Audrey is he, so that's good. Audrey lives in reality, but I don't think Audrey really cares too much. No, that would be, gosh, I wrote about him. I'll find
Abigail et Wu.
Yes, that would be who it was. Yeah. Okay. So he ran on that platform quite openly of, I'm pursuing self-ID, and this is a thing that I think is a good thing for Taiwan.
Yes. Did the inclusion of a male in the women's Olympic category in boxing change anything about the level of visibility of the issue?
No, because everyone in Taiwan fully supports Lin, and if you say anything publicly, you better be prepared to face a huge backlash. No, everyone in Taiwan, that's a touchy subject due to Taiwan's very tricky position in the world as a country, a non-recognized country. I think that was nationalism at play. And I think also there's a huge conflation of trans and intersex. So when that came out, I think people really didn't understand what was happening. I think they thought, because I don't know what you think about it, but I think it's pretty clear that Lin has a DSD, right? Like,
probably.
I don't think, So I don't think most people here understand what that means. I think what they thought was Lin was being accused of being just a complete straight up biological male, no confusion, just that is a man. And they didn't understand that wasn't the accusation. The accusation is that you have an intersex condition, intersex male, right? But they're clearly, hey, do this simple test and let's prove it.
Yeah.
No. Nationalism got in the way of any ability to think critically on that. I heard it's a Chinese conspiracy, a Russian conspiracy. It's, you can hear my cat.
Hello, cat. Hello, Truffles.
She's like, self-ID sucks. Yep. But no, Taiwan, if anything, that did not help our cause in Taiwan at all.
Okay, I see.
It definitely didn't, because then they saw anybody who is a sex realist or gender critical or whatever term you prefer, apparently anti-gender is the new term, as being the enemy because of that.
That's interesting. I was trying to find someone in Algeria. After I got in touch with you, I was like, maybe I'll try and find a turf in Algeria and find out, what people are saying about Imam Khalif. And I found radfems in Algeria who are 100% behind him. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it sounds kind of similar. So nationalism trumps all. I mean, I like when this thing about the Olympics first started, I was like, there's absolutely no way in the world that Irish people, knowing how people feel about their country, that if you sent somebody to the Olympics and then suddenly the entire world turned around and started telling you that this person was a cheat and that you were terrible for letting him go and stuff, you probably get your back up, and probably it would look very different being from that country. I think we're all sort of influenced by our feelings about our own people and country and stuff. So it doesn't really shock me that much. But yeah, and especially, even though you're saying people aren't aware of what DSD is, but especially if it is a DSD and people are thinking, giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying maybe he was raised to think he was female, and so on and so forth. It's trickier when you're on the inside of the country, I think. So that's interesting. So did they, when people first started talking about it, did they say, like, no, he's not trans, you're confusing this issue, like a lot of people did? They were saying, oh no, you're a TERF and you're talking about this, you must assume this person is trans. No, it's something completely different. Or were they just like, this is a woman, what are you talking about, use your eyes? Like,
as far as Taiwanese go, I think I made one post about it, just kind of going, here are the facts, and based on these facts, I think it's completely irrational to say that it's some worldwide conspiracy involving labs around the world that are, like that, and this issue could be cleared up in a very simple way. And I had a few people who I know personally and I think are well-intentioned, and so I really believe that national hysteria is behind this. But the argument was, I think their argument was that Lin is a woman, born a woman. There's no problem. This is a conspiracy. The IVA is corrupt. Those arguments.
Okay. And that brings me then to what is the...
this is funny. You'll find this entertaining. So when Lin got back to Taiwan, Lin was given a contract to represent menstrual products.
No.
Yeah, I'll send it to you later to represent.
No.
And the photos are just like, wow. Yeah, representing female hygiene products. Yes.
Jesus. That's like when Imam Khalif got back to Algeria, they put him on the cover of Vogue.
Yeah, so AI Photoshop though. It wasn't.
Yeah. But yeah, the Lin photos, are they also? I mean, I've been through. I remember the week of the Olympics or before, I went through Lin's Facebook, and it's clearly culturally, socially male person. Like from what I can tell, like there's no. It's the same with another person who competed in the Olympics, but who absolutely was not accused of anything. But I know that there was another male in that competition. I just don't have enough evidence of it yet. But so I went through a lot of old posts, and it was like, if we talk about something being socialized as female, there was nothing in these people's past, and some of them post quite a lot, that indicated at all that they were socialized in any way female up until the week that they became famous for participating in women's sports.
I haven't checked out any of the social media or anything like that. I was really shocked by the level of just sort of irrational arguments that I was seeing online. I was really like, wow, this is not good for us, because they're conflating it all, right? Like, oh, all of it is now in the same thing. Intersex are the same, trans are the same. You know, the para-Olympian guy who's running, he's visually impaired, the Italian, Valerie, the guy who's running in the female competition. I think he just lost, but he's like 50, he's competing with 20-year-olds. That guy, you know, I'm seeing more sympathy towards him than I should be seeing. And I think it's because of what happened in the Olympics.
Oh, no way. So you're just like, I'm not going to talk about this. You should draw less attention to it than you otherwise would, maybe.
I made a post just rationally, right? From like, let's look at this piece by piece. Let's take it apart and let's look at this, and this. And then trying to have discussions, you know, like street epistemology style with people. What could I do to change your mind? What evidence do you need? Like, oh, you want another test? Sure. But then the athletes won't do it. So walk me through why you think they won't. Like having these conversations with people and just trying to talk people through it. But it just never didn't work, because you're dealing with people who are ideologically captured, right?
Yeah,
like,
they've made a decision not to believe evidence.
And it's not a genuine conversation people are trying to have, which is why the internet is so awful. And that's why I don't think I would contact an organization like New Bloom. You are ideologically captured. And I don't know what kind of genuine and honest conversation we're going to have after you've already written about me several times and, you know, clearly have this aggressive viewpoint that you have. But yeah, it was definitely shocking to be here and be like, wow, this is interesting.
So is there a culture in Taiwan of tomboys, which is like very male presenting female lesbians?
Yes, totally. Because you see a lot of what we would call tomboys, at least growing up, what we would call tomboys. I'm not sure, you know, what terminology they would prefer, or butch, or more masculine presenting women. And I usually see them with very feminine women. And I think it's a way to, you know, it's more culturally accepted to be a lesbian that looks that way.
Okay, so how easy is it to be a lesbian generally in Taiwan?
Taiwan legalized same-sex marriage a few years ago. It's the first country in Asia. I feel like Taiwan's pretty progressive, and there's tons of gay bars, tons of gay clubs. Obviously, less for lesbians. I think there might be one. There used to definitely be one. I think there may be one. This is funny. Before we spoke, I came across on Instagram, someone sent me an Instagram of a lesbian claiming man. He claims to be a lesbian, out at the lesbian club with a couple of Taiwanese women. So the lesbian clubs here clearly have expat giant men in them claiming to be lesbians. He's huge. But I'm not Taiwanese, so I'm always hesitant to answer those things. But from my outside perspective, it seems to be quite accepted and okay.
Because there's like, so Lin, do you know if Lin has a partner?
No idea.
Okay. Because there's another individual who competed in the Olympics who I'm pretty sure is male and is from a very rural place, also in a very sort of underdeveloped, not that Taiwan is underdeveloped, from a very underdeveloped place like Algeria, very conservative, and also from the sticks. Like, he's from the sticks and he's in female competition and he has a girlfriend, and it's in a place where being a lesbian is absolutely not okay.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, it would be interesting to see. So are you saying that in Taiwan it's socially accepted by not just in terms of law, but in terms of, like, you know, is it only in Taipei like that you can be gay, or is it?
I mean, it's still East Asia, so I'm sure I know gay men who cannot publicly come out to their families and who are the firstborn sons, and the expectation is you've got to somehow get married and have a kid. But those are rare. I see gay people hand in hand walking down the street. There's Asia's largest gay pride festival, or LGBT rainbow numbers afterwards, pride parade here every year. I think that I would say it's accepted with, of course, some limitations based on East Asian culture. But there's people aren't murdered for being gay here. People aren't beat up on the street. That definitely does not happen. There's probably some bullying in school and, you know, some stigma with traditional families, but I'd say overall there's a high level of acceptance. When it comes to trans-identified males and female spaces, you're talking about a society that still segregates based on sex for a lot of things. Like, we have hot spring culture here in Taiwan, not as much as Japan, but we still have sex-separated hot springs. There is absolutely no way that women would accept a man walking into their hot spring.
Man claiming to be a woman.
No, there's absolutely, you know, those surveys that are done in these academic journals, they're 100% correct. The average Taiwanese person would go, you know, I don't care who you're having sex with, or I don't care who you marry, like, that's fine. But when it comes to male and female spaces, I think most people here would be really uncomfortable. And we've done our own surveys when the government provided the groundwork for self-ID in 2021. Our organization did 2 surveys to the general public, and we got thousands and thousands of people voting and saying we are opposed to this. So
I should go back and read all your stuff. Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
Most people are just not going to be okay with this because there are so many spaces that are separated with male and female. And I think people would, if you walked into a female-only space with your male genitalia out, you will be absolutely
mobbed,
destroyed. Yes, and you should be, because you don't belong there, and you know damn well you don't. But yeah, it would absolutely not be okay here. There are still some traditional ideas about male and female, but yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. I just keep thinking, in other countries, you have this sort of culture of third gender. So you have it obviously in Thailand.
In Hawaii. I'm from Hawaii.
Yeah, what are they called in Hawaii?
They're called mahu. And I have friends who are mahu, and I've written about that. And just the other week, a Taiwanese guy in an argument tried to bring up, you know, Polynesian, Hawaiian mahu. And I'm like, don't play with me, because I'm from Hawaii. And I know about people who are mahu, and it is culturally and historically just men. You know?
So it's male to female.
It's what happens in a homophobic society where you cannot be openly gay. This isn't shocking news. In Samoa, it's fa'aini. And there are plenty of men in Samoa. Like, there's a famous soccer player who plays on the men's team despite having breast implants and hormones and surgery. He knows he's male.
So the mahu are exclusively male to female?
Well, now, because of gender identity ideology, you have females who claim to be mahu, but no, I mean, it's acknowledged historically. There was never a woman who said, hey, can I opt out of getting married and having 20 kids and go be a warrior or a fisherman or a hunter? No. That has never occurred.
It has happened. There's two places actually that I came across. One is in Pakistan or Afghanistan. I think it's Pakistan.
That's because they don't have a son.
Yes.
And that's a different situation.
It's misogyny as well. Like it's a different thing.
Yes. They try to use that one too, but anybody with basic knowledge of history.
Because they have to be a woman once they hit puberty.
Yes,
like they have to go back to
It's not a constant. Yeah, so in Hawaii we have a tradition of mahu. It's men who identify with like a female element, and they have mystical, magical, powers, and they represent a particular position in society. And I know men who are mahu today, and they agree with me about gender ideology.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them are ideologically captured.
But this is a really sensitive question, especially you have friends in the community. But do they, like third gender males in the rest of the world, tend to work in sex work?
The people that I know?
Or in general in Hawaii? In
Hawaii. There are a lot of drag queens that identify as mahu. There's not a open... Okay, where I'm from in Hawaii, there may be underground sex work. I'm sure there is, but absolutely nothing. I'm from the sticks. There's no, which is good. That's a good thing. But there's no strip clubs. There's no open prostitution. It's possible, but it's not something that I'm aware of. I have a good friend.
Male or female or male, you mean?
Yeah, I don't. I know that a lot of mahu. I don't know any female mahu. I just know that there's women now who claim that identity. But the men, I know a lot of men who are drag queens. My friend who identifies as mahu, he is Native Hawaiian. He just looks like a big, gorgeous man. He's a social worker. He wants to protect kids from puberty blockers. He often talks to parents of gay youth and tells them, let them be who they are and don't try to medicate them. They see that Western gender ideology is different than their traditional narratives. And whether or not we agree with their traditional narratives, I don't have a problem with an adult man making those choices for himself and then choosing and knowing that he does not belong in female spaces.
Sure. And the only problem I have with it is that, as you said earlier, it's kind of native homophobia, and it's popped up like the invention of fire. Like it popped up independently all over the world. They're like, oh, you're a feminine man. Well, then you're basically a type of woman. Right. And what really disturbs me is that, our Western governments are paying a lot of money to sort of codify this homophobia. So and I don't, when, how do I say this, it's a very sensitive topic, but I see that there's a promotion of LGBTQ rights around the world coming from Western governments, particularly Canada, Sweden, the Netherlands, Norway and Denmark to a lesser extent, and the UK's Commonwealth and Foreign Office to a very large but secretive extent. It seems not many people know about it. They pay a lot for development. Also the World Bank. There's a lot of these international organizations, and it's all development and international relations and foreign policy. And they're funding a lot of NGOs in countries to promote LGBTQI rights. And so the reason why they're doing that is because gay rights are human rights, whatever, of course. It's bad for the country's economy to exclude all these gay people from the economy. That's fair enough. It's also because of AIDS. It started off as an AIDS thing. So a lot of this money is going to improve the lot of gay people. But in order to do that, I think as Western countries, we've accepted this third gender homophobic workaround as what gay means to the people in Sri Lanka or the people in Brazil or the people in wherever. So it's sort of like our efforts to help these people the Western countries' efforts to help people who are marginalized because of their androphilia, which is their male's attraction to males, they're saying, okay, yeah, whatever, you are a woman, give these people self-ID. This is the way to help them and to improve their situation and get them on the health radar and stuff. So I feel like we're doing like a very colonial sort of, yeah, you're transgender now. Presumably, I mean, there were definitely androphilic males in Taiwan 100 years ago. What was do you know anything about like how they were described? Were they just not described because it was taboo?
They were not described.
Okay.
They were not described. Definitely not. 100 years ago would have been 1924. Japan would have held Taiwan as a colony. No, it would not have been discussed. Homosexuality would have not been, and anything other than that is not a thing that would have been.
And so very effeminate males would have just got married to women and pretended not to be gay. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I sort of see, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that all over the world where this has independently popped up, this phenomenon of calling feminine males a type of woman, the fact that they all work in most countries, from what I can see, they're heavily involved in sex work, which is why the decriminalization of prostitution is now a trans rights issue, because that's how common it is. I wonder to what extent, okay, let me frame it another way. Your friends who you know in Hawaii who are Mahu, or Mahu people in general in Hawaii, who do they end up with as life partners?
With other men, because they're gay men.
But are they the other men? What kind of men are they?
Macho men, masculine men.
Yeah, and are they like straight passing gay men, or are they?
Yes.
The straight passing gay.
I'm generalizing. I'm sure it doesn't fit into every category, but yes, they tend to be self-identified heterosexual men who are quite macho and masculine.
Okay, so they call themselves heterosexual.
Yes.
So, yeah, see, this is where things get complicated, because there is she-male porn is really popular.
It is. I saw recently there are women now who pretend to. And trans activists are angry that they're appropriating their identities, and the irony apparently is lost on them as to.
It's a beautiful irony.
It's a very interesting series of posts I saw. Yes.
It's very good. I'm very happy for those girls. Did you ever hear the word GAMP? Have you come across it?
Yes.
So this is the idea that it posits that those men who have boyfriends who are Mahu or Fafafine or whatever, those men are actually straight men with I wouldn't say fetish, but a sexual preference for a mix of both forms. Right. So for particularly female with a dick, like chicks with dicks.
Just look at the success of the sex industry in Thailand, and you have all the proof of that you need. I mean, whenever I go to Thailand, it's big old macho guys in the military, or with ladyboys. There is a specific word for them there. I feel like but it's a huge industry. You do not see that in Taiwan, and this issue in Taiwan is really just the past few years that's really flared up. In the past couple of years, maybe 2 years, it's blown up hugely. Again, in niche areas. If you're not involved in this, like we are, you may not notice it, right? But now I see so many groups, so many posts, so many events that are geared towards this. And it really is the influx of Western academics, Western educated Taiwanese who are bringing these ideas in. The idea in the government that you kind of always have to follow what's happening in the U.S. Mm-hmm. It's really...
Because Taiwanese government take their cues from the West and not from China, I guess.
Oh, no. Yeah, there's no big time, no connection to China.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Because my theory is that, having have to try and phrase this properly. My theory is that there might not be so much she-male, chicks with dicks, katui supply if there wasn't so much GAMP demand. If you see what I mean. So if you as a society you find this workaround for effeminate gay men,
of course,
and it's a compromise, and it's like, okay, but I suspect that men like it. So I feel like
it's a huge, like you said, it's one of the top, if not the most, depending on where you are in the world, porn searches. So obviously it's really, really popular. I think in Taiwan you wouldn't see that here because we're economically developed. It's a first world democratic nation. It's one of the top 20 economies in the world. Thailand is poor. In Thailand, you grow up extraordinarily poor. And if you're a young gay boy and this is a way to provide for your family or get out of the shithole that you're living in, or, you know, just to improve your lifestyle, that is an option that people are willing to put you in, or you may be willing to do. And people will pay. People go there for sex.
So you think if poverty wasn't an issue, this wouldn't be a phenomenon?
I think in Thailand or in the Asian countries where we see it a lot, I think obviously with anything having to do with prostitution, poverty is a driving factor with men or women, right? And in Thailand, that there's a huge demand, and there are people who are willing to supply because a lot of them come from nothing. I mean, I've known mail order brides in Hawaii that came from the Philippines, and they came from nothing. It's the same sort of concept. And, you know, you go to Thailand, and I've been 12 times. I live in Asia. It's easy for me to fly over there. I love Thailand. It's very upsetting to experience to be in it. But a lot of the ladyboys, they do not claim to be trans, and they don't claim to be ladies. They're pretty open with, I'm a boy.
It's like the travestis in Brazil. They don't claim to be female at all.
It is a different thing than the autogynephiles and the men that we see in the West that are forcing their way into women's spaces.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys would not do that. They know I'm a guy. So there's a bit of a difference.
So, yes. So, you know, this Blanchard's typology. I don't know how to pronounce that word. So you've got your 90% AGPs and then 10% HSTS, homosexual, transsexuals. My theory is that the manifestation of trans in the West is AGP because it's okay to be gay.
Yeah.
The manifestation of trans in the developing world, I just say developing world, I don't know what the politically correct term is now, but let's say the poorer parts of the world.
Everything we're talking about is politically incorrect, so why stop? Just use whatever words you prefer.
It's true.
Yeah. Developing world. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't there? I'm sure there's something I'm supposed to call it now. Like, I don't want to insult poor people. I only want to insult troons. So I do try to be a nice person generally.
Developing nations is the word that is.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's an economically underprivileged places.
Yes.
Are selling that for sure. Yeah.
So AGPs were, we're third gender, we're that, like, you know, and they jumped on that bandwagon, whatever. So what we live in the Western sphere of circles that we move in, even though you're in Taiwan or whatever, the manifestation of this for us in the US, in Europe, is AGPs, because it's okay to be an effeminate man and go about your business, whereas in underdeveloped nations or economically something
challenged,
something like that,
underprivileged,
economically underprivileged nations, it's much more likely to, the manifestation of trans is homosexual transsexuals, and that's not to say that AGPs don't exist in those countries. It's just that absolutely nobody's found a workaround for that. Although I have spent a lot of time in India, and I've seen a lot of hijras because they get on the trains. Hijras, there's clearly loads of homosexual, transsexual hijras, but every now and then you'd see a clear AGP.
Right. I've seen documentaries, and I've also noticed, the same thing.
You've got the pretty ones, and then you've got the hulking, ugly ones, and that's.
I think it's a lot easier in Thailand as well, because they look more feminine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's, I don't know how to express this in a way that makes sense, but I think it's a lot harder in the West
They've softer features.
to make demands to, like, I'm a woman and demand your way into female spaces. In Thailand, they tend not to have that argument, so it's not really an issue there in Thailand. It's sort of a cultural phenomenon, and they exist in their own sort of frame, but they tend to pass more.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds bad, but they tend to
but it's true. Like
look the part more. They're smaller, they're more feminine, they have access to remarkable surgeons, possibly the best in the world, who deal with that specific issue of feminizing men. They have a huge market of clients. They're able to purchase the things that they require. I mean, in the West, I'm sorry, but you 100% are always going to be a big hulking guy.
Mm-hmm.
And not that, and to clarify, I don't care what you look like. You're a man and you don't belong in female spaces. But I've never had that issue in the multiple times I've been to Thailand of a ladyboy or however they identify barging into a female space. It's never happened.
Yeah, and in India also the men are slighter. So I think that's why it's less, what's the word, egregious in some ways. But we started this talking about this because we were saying that the men
we went off cue.
The men in Thailand. Well, no, I'm still on the AGPs and my theory about development. But the men in Thailand don't claim to be women. The men in the travestis don't claim to be women. All of this. Right. So this claim to be women is the AGP influence.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that was never, and it doesn't seem to be. Even the Waryas in Indonesia, it's the same. They don't, even if they claim to be a third gender or a woman spirit or whatever, they don't claim to be actual women. And that's a complete imposition of the West as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder, it's very interesting. But I think that I wrote about it last week, and I called it rewilding homophobia, which is kind of, because colonial powers introduced anti-sodomy laws, and so this is often cited by, like, even UN agencies and stuff. They talk about this colonial imposition of the binary, and the colonial imposition of anti-sodomy laws really fucked things up for the trans people, for the third genders and the two spirits and the mahu and all that stuff. However, what they mean by that, I think, is that these men were happily going about their business being this half male, half female creature when they suddenly weren't allowed to have anal sex, which is what the problem is. So if we repeal the sodomy laws, then everything can sort of, then we're back where we started. You know what I mean? So they were able to say it was anti-sodomy laws that caused all the problems. And if we repeal all these colonial era laws, then we... and we remove all these sexist binary colonial era thinking, then we'll go back to the olden days. And I think that our Western governments are supporting that idea. Western governments are funding that, the promotion of that idea. They're saying, this is what we want. We want to go back to a time where men were men, women were women, and third genders were third genders. And no, don't worry that it's homophobic, actually. And ultimately, to come back then to the thing about prostitution, it's almost like, this is outrageous what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say anyway. It's almost like countries independently, cultures, before they were even countries, cultures independently sort of established almost colonies of sexual playthings who were these gynoandromorphs, these male-female mixes.
It doesn't sound as crazy as you might think.
And as a result of this sexual predilection, which I do not care. Like, there's an amazing researcher, Paul Vazzi, I think is his name, and he studies the Fa'afafine in Samoa, and his boyfriend is a Fa'afafine. So he's like, talks about this, and I'm going to contact him and talk about it. But he's like, it sounds like a wonderful relationship. Like, it sounds really nice. You know, they love each other, and I'm sure they you know, like, have you seen this viral video that went around a while ago about this dude dressed in like black cowboy sort of outfit, and he's got like a transsexual girlfriend, so chick with a dick. And he's talking about how wonderful it is to have a chick with a dick. And I saw an Andrew Tate video going around the other day saying, what would you prefer, a beautiful transsexual, the world's most beautiful transsexual, or a really ugly woman? Somebody who looks like...
Of course, guys, I will tell you what guys would prefer. They'd prefer whatever looks more palatable. And it was Helen Joyce recently. Helen Joyce was on a podcast that I listened to, and he asked her this question. It was a gay man, really funny. He's Irish. Gosh, what was his name? He's an Irish guy. Starts with a J, I think.
Jeremy something?
I'm gonna find it right now. So Helen Joyce was on, and Jack's Jewel.
Oh, okay.
Jack
did see it,
Jewel had Helen Joyce come on. And he asked her that question, and she was like, well, of course they're going to go for the sexy, hypersexualized version of femininity, right? I mean, I can put it in somewhere. Like, for a lot of guys, that's especially the Andrew Tate variety, that's all that matters. So yeah, of course they're going to go for that.
So we have these cultures that are very strict on roles for men and roles for women, but they've created this sort of colonies of sexual playthings for themselves. And as a result of trying to demarginalize those colonies of sex workers, those prostituted males, for you know, we have needed to erase the sex binary in law, which is damaging to women. So it really pisses me off, because if you sort of link it up that way, you're sort of saying, like, in order for you to have your, you know, because the men will never marry those men. Like, this is when they talk about the most marginalized people in the world, they're talking about those gynoandromorphs who exist. You know, they can't, like, I've read a lot of research, a lot of HIV research, and they try to figure out the lives of transsexual sex workers, male transsexual sex workers. And when they ask them, why are you doing prostitution? It's never what the ideologues want. It's never because I'm so super marginalized. It's because my boob job is expensive and because it allows me to hook up with the kind of partner that I want. Because straight men, gamps, okay, so whether we call them straight or not, it is very tricky, but so we'll just say gamps, gynoandromorphophiliacs, they are attracted to this type of man, but they would never have a relationship with them. So so if you want to help these marginalized male to female transsexual prostitutes, what you need to do is you need to sort of make it more normal that straight men admit that they're into this. But but that's not going to work, because people are too conservative. So because everyone like, no, but that would make me gay. And it's like, well, yeah, technically, but, you know, look, just stop doing what you're doing in secret and do it out in the open. So I'm on this like desperate mission to figure out who are the clients of these homosexual transsexuals. And so I've gone into the Brussels red light district. We have a special zone. We have an entire zone for just transsexual homosexuals in Brussels. Yeah, because this is where I live. I'm from Dublin, and I've gone in there a couple of times. And the first time I went, I was like, who are your clients? Are they straight or are they gay? Basically, using terms I hope everyone will understand. I say, are they straight or are they gay? And they're like, oh, they're straight. They're hetero. Like, this is what they told me.
I don't see a gay man going to someone who's very feminine and female.
Exactly.
Presenting with female lingerie and female enhanced parts. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's what I think as well.
If you ask me, are the men who have sex with them completely straight? I am not a sexologist. I'm not a whatever. I couldn't tell you. I would say no, but you know, clearly they like femininity, and you know, perhaps a male sex drive matched with a male sex drive with the body of Blair White would appeal to, you know, hiding the penis would appeal to quite a lot of men.
Yeah. And I think that you know, I've read before also that men, gay men, in order to attract other gay men, have to what's the word? Tone down their femininity sometimes, because you might be a gay man who's quite feminine, but you want to attract a man who's into men. So you have to sort of reduce your femininity. And so it makes kind of sense.
That's confusing. There's so many different types of gay men that I wouldn't. Yeah, I have so many different types of friends and the different types of men they like, and it seems to be so confusing. And then there's specifically types of gay men who are very feminine. So
yeah, there's all sorts of there is all sorts of things, but it makes sense in this case that you would remove sex as the thing that drives your attraction, because if you have a shitload of men in every city, like you go to any city and type in "she-males near me" and you'll be inundated with WhatsApp numbers, and so it makes sense then that you would say, oh, well, then it's not sex that's the driver of your attraction, it's the femininity or masculinity. And so in that sense, the activists are sort of onto something, in when they want to replace sex with gender. And I just, where my question has always been, all right, I can understand why people would want to do that. I can understand why these people would like to live this way and have not be threatened and harassed and this all makes sense. But why is there so much money behind it? Why is there so much institutionalization of it? And I often wonder, is there a link between the massive numbers of HIV in these sex work communities of transsexual homosexuals, whatever it is that you say you are, fine, just come in. You know, in all over Thailand now, in India and Brazil, they're staffing HIV clinics with transsexual homosexuals in order to get the transsexual homosexuals to come to them, and they're offering gender affirming care. So this started to be piloted a few years ago. I think it started in India, where they said these men are completely off the health radar. They don't want PrEP, they don't want mental health treatment, they don't want this, they don't want that, they want to work in sex work, they don't want to give it up. That's why all the big trans activist organizations are like, sex work is work, because they're like, this is how we like to live. We want partners, we want money. And also I have read in research papers, which sounds outrageous, but they want to do it because it validates, well, AGPs do it often, I think, to validate their femininity, but I think maybe it applies also to homosexual transsexuals. And so I think that in India, what they said was, okay, they don't want treatment or healthcare, but what they do want is hormones and boob jobs. So let's offer them hormones and boob jobs, and then when they're there, we treat them for all the other things. So I wonder if this sort of the Western countries, development agencies, were sort of fueling this old homophobia as a way of improving the lot of some of the most wretchedly marginalized people in any given place. Obviously not Taiwan. We're here to talk about Taiwan, but anyway, that's my theory. That's my question, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I think a lot of what you said makes sense. And I'd be curious to know, like, with the on the ground research that you're doing in Brussels, like, it's interesting to find out what the answers are from the prostitutes, the sex workers that are there, you know, like, that's interesting. And it's not something that I've thought in depth about, but I think you make a lot of valid points.
I keep writing to transsexual, homosexual prostitutes in Brussels and saying, hey, can I give you money to just meet you? Like, I'll pay, how much is a blowjob? I'll pay you that just to talk to me for 15 minutes about who your clients are. They won't do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't really know why. But anyway, that's how I've been thinking about things.
I feel like we both know it's mostly self-identified straight guys. Probably with wives and kids at home.
Yeah. And
with
so this
porn addictions and
this is why it's so sensitive. I've written about this before as well, that a man who sleeps with both men and women, so think about it, a man who sleeps with the people who are 49 times more than the general population more likely to have HIV, 49 times more likely than anyone else to have HIV, is transsexual, homosexual sex workers in places like Brussels. And that man goes home and has sex with a woman without a condom, because why would she wear a condom, who is going to have children. This is explosive. And this is like, in terms of, in HIV language, we talk about the people who are most affected by AIDS are women and girls, yeah? But then we have another category. We have another piece of terminology called key populations. So when you see the words key populations, you think to yourself, oh, that must be the people who are most affected by AIDS. It's not quite, because they're a small number of people, but they're key in the sense that they are the bridge to the general population. Now, you can't say any of that anymore in AIDS research. You can't say bridging populations because it's so stigmatizing. You can't say the people who are most likely to be the bridge. You have to say key populations, and everyone nods and winks and understands what they mean. And so the key populations are intravenous drug users, because they share needles and because they have relationships with women and men, and they're young and old. Like, they're a huge key population, and this is why we're trying to criminalize safe injection sites and all this stuff. Those are key populations as well, not because they are the vast majority of people who have the disease, but because they're the ones who are fucking keeping it in circulation, you know, because they spread it to so many people by their behavior. And so women and girls are actually most affected by HIV and AIDS in the world. They're the ones who are dying. They're the ones whose children are dying, whose children are being orphaned, but they're not the ones responsible for spreading it. And I think these homosexual transsexuals are with intravenous drug users and female and sex workers of all sexes. They are the ones who are being targeted. But even among female sex workers, like, the level of HIV in this population is huge. And I was talking to a journalist from the New York Times yesterday who was saying to me that the availability of the drug and the price of the drug has nothing to do with the uptake of the drug. You cannot convince these men to take PrEP. You just can't. They're so hard to reach. And it's not really clear why. There's a little bit of like, you get paid more money if you have anal sex without a condom. And if this is how you meet your potential partners.
Male sexuality is so bizarre to me. It's so, I mean, you don't really hear stories about paraphilias in women, and you don't really hear about female pedophiles, and you don't, you know, it's all of these just bizarre stories of male sexuality are so, it's so strange, and it's so different as a woman, you know. A lot of it I can't wrap my mind around. Because they're just so different. Of course, there are women who have paraphilias or are pedophiles. They are such a small amount that it's difficult to, you know, it's a male-dominated field of just oddities when it comes to sexual behaviors. It's another creature entirely.
What I worry about is we've got this, and this is bad enough as it is, but I don't know if you've been following this in Western countries especially, but men who are found to be in possession of child sex abuse material now are being let off.
Yes. Germany is leading the way, no? Germany is really pushing hard for getting rid of punishment. I know it's happening in different places. I've been following that for quite a few years and trying to push minor attracted people into the LGBT blah blah umbrella. Academics, there's queer academics, self-identified queer academics who publish about this. It's an orientation. We shouldn't discriminate. We should welcome them, you know, blah blah. It's
well, I'm thinking, like, you know what you were saying, male sexuality is so fucked up and weird. I'm thinking that, what if the reason why all these men are being let off with just a slap on the wrist instead of custodial sentences for possession of child sex abuse material, I suspect it's because so many fucking men are into that material that the prisons would be there's no possibility to house them all, to sentence them all.
I mean, so you're probably right about that. Yeah, unfortunately.
Because they have access to it now, and they're stupid, and they think they won't get caught, and they're like, oh, I'll just, you know, download this on WhatsApp or Telegram, and nobody will ever know. And so I think the judges are saying, look, what are the chances of him actually doing this out in the real world? What are the chances of him just keeping it online? And then they say, okay, you know what, we're going to, you know, I think there's so much of it that they have to say to themselves, this is actually just male nature for many men, and you know, and so this is what I really freak out about. We are decriminalizing prostitution because we are decriminalizing all sorts of things in a kind of like shrug your shoulders sort of men do be like that, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the way it is. And I feel like the next step is child sex abuse materials. It's going to be like there was a UN treaty. It's in the works. It's going to be signed into, it's going to be ratified or signed or whatever this December. And it was about child sex abuse materials. And the majority of the Western world voted for an amendment or for a piece of an article or provision, sorry, saying that you can't be in any way punished for having computer generated child porn, child
Right.
sex
Yeah.
materials. And because I think they know that the prisons can't handle all the people, and it's going to be such a huge thing because so many people want that material. And so I'm like,
Right.
what was keeping a lid on this before, and how do we get it back? Because I think if you say to yourself, okay, indulging male sexual proclivities is the only way to keep society running, because, you know, like we're in for big trouble, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the free, easy, constant access to pornography has been such a huge problem with smartphones and the internet and everyone, you know, at any age being able to access porn. It's already such a huge problem. And now we have these weird ideas about what we should accept with sexualities, including child abuse. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not good.
And I really worry about Andrew Tate. Like, everyone loves him, or all the incels love him, or whatever, and maybe young men as well love him. And he's been convicted of abusing kids, or not convicted, sorry, charged or accused of allegedly abusing underage young girls. And I recently, I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever? So I was looking for a transsexual homosexual who would talk to me. So I went on OnlyFans. Have you ever been on there?
I have avoided it as much as I can. Unfortunately, I do know people that are on it. So I've clicked to look and be like, what is it exactly that they're doing? And then, you know, been upset by what I found. Unfortunately, not my close friends, but it seems to be quite the thing with women believing that it's empowering and it's a great thing. So I tend to be in the minority wherever I am in thinking that, you know, being a sugar baby or being on OnlyFans is not great. And you know, I don't care for it.
I wish that wasn't the cultural norm. Yeah.
Usually the minority with that.
I wish it wasn't the cultural norm. You know, I think when I was growing up, I would have very much liked the idea. Back when I was hot, I would have been like, oh, I can make some money. I think it would have been so easy to fall into it. But I think that the way society was when I was, you know, 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever, was more like, that's trashy. But now it's just so normalized. And it's like, to whose end?
To us is empowering,
For whose benefit, though? Okay, so you say we can rejig it and say it's empowering, but for whose benefit is it? It's definitely not the quote-unquote performer's benefit, you know? It's like...
I've never found that giving men exactly what they want is empowering or particularly useful or something that I want to do as a contrarian and feminist. If you tell me that that's, you know, it's you're just giving men exactly what they want, and I don't know how it's empowering.
How that helps anyone.
You make $10. Like, you're not making. Nobody's getting loaded. There's a few cases, but no one's getting rich from this. And you know, I'm not a fan, but I tend to be in the minority there.
I was listening to a Twitter space by Brianna Wu. Do you know who that is?
No.
Brianna Wu is an AGP. So anyway, he had some guy on his Twitter space who was a homosexual transsexual, and that fucking guy literally came out and said, clear as day, I started doing OnlyFans as a way to meet the kind of partner I want, because he came from a town. He came from somewhere in the sticks in the US, and it was like there was nowhere. The only way I could meet the kind of men that I'm interested in was by going to the city. And I said, no, you know what? I'll do OnlyFans. And that's how he met his partners. And it's like, you know, women are doing it because they're like, I'm power, a bit of money, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, the normalization of this whole thing is all about male sexual wants and needs, whether they're
Right.
gay men, whether they're straight men, whether they're men pretending to be women, it's women, like the decriminalization of prostitution as well. Like, it's women are being trafficked from Romanian villages to Berlin mega brothels. This is what's gonna be the real outcome of it. It's just how much of the bullshit around us is caused by like fucking runaway male sexuality. Like, I mean, guys, get your shit together,
Well, they don't have a reason to get their shit together. The world is currently helping them not to get their shit together.
I can't believe I didn't know about your work until now.
No, I mean, it's very niche. I mean, I'm in Taiwan. Most people aren't really aware until they get a global alert about me being anti-gender that this is happening here. And it's very small scale and it's very niche here, right? I mean, we've only had a handful of self-ID cases go through. And I have written a little bit about Hawaii. So I did write an article about, in my tiny hometown, a couple of trans-identified boys kicking girls out of female competition in track and field and going to states. And
I see that on your blog.
A little bit about that, but mostly it's about Taiwan.
And are you not on Twitter?
I have a secret Twitter, but to be honest, it's just too much.
I'm stuck.
I look at it, I watch it. Should I get a Twitter? Should it be active?
No, I mean, if you're trying to do dissertations and
stuff, I mean, I have a Substack, I have a website, I have Instagram, which has quite a big following for a private profile that's very niche. I have about 6,000 people. So I try to get the message across, and then all of our organizations in Taiwan also have social medias.
Yeah, so they're keeping track of.
I think if I had a Twitter, I might actually lose my mind. It's just so much.
Which country is your, like, Ireland's the UK, Canada is the US, like, which is New Zealand to Australia? Which country is closest to Taiwan in culture that everyone sort of? China. But so people follow what's going on there.
Culturally, Taiwan, I mean, 90-something% of Taiwanese people are immigrants at some point from China.
Okay.
But of course, we have a huge fight with China over, we are an independent country, a democracy, really with no economic or any kind of ties to China. But so there's always an ongoing battle there. And China is going through their own conservative rebranding, right? I mean, China right now, there's some weird things happening there. They've banned effeminate men from media. They're trying to ban K-pop. You certainly can't be a feminist there. You will go to jail or you will be attacked. In East Asia, you have Korea with the strong, they have their, I'm always telling people that free the corset movement in South Korea, which is huge. But there's a huge pushback violently against feminists in South Korea. In Japan, there doesn't seem to be anything happening. And we're often curious as to why that is. But yeah. So,
I was thinking that China wouldn't be the referent, however you say it in English, because there's so much resistance to Chinese cultural imposition, or I thought there would have been resistance because of the political stuff. So I thought maybe regional.
But as far as, I mean, Taiwanese people love the Japanese. They love anime. They love the food. They love the culture. Taiwanese are the biggest consumers of Japanese products, and they go to Japan for every holiday. And the Japanese are our biggest tourists here in Taiwan. So culturally, there's a foundation that came from China. Japan colonized Taiwan. There's certainly a huge American Western influence as well. People, I would be afraid to be a homosexual in China. So clearly that's not the case here, which is a good thing. But the encroaching push of these Western ideas are certainly not a good thing either. And it's taking root here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Jaclynn.
My pleasure. Tell Biscuit that I love her.
I will. I can feel that you love her.
I do love her so much. She's so cute.
Okay, take care. Have a lovely evening. Talk soon. Ciao. Bye-bye.
If you like my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to peaked.substack.com and taking out a paid subscription.